Again, I'm home, and so I have a little bit different setup. So hopefully you can see everything. So I am a regional admissions director for St. Mary's College of Maryland. So what that means is I live in my region. I live in Gaithersburg, and I cover Montgomery and Howard County. And I come from, my children went to Montgomery County, MCPS schools. I live in Montgomery County, and I used to do what all these people do. I used to be I don't know if the name has changed, but college and career advisor at Northwood High School. I also did like a practicum for a graduate certificate at WJ. So I'm very familiar with the county and very connected emotionally in lots of ways. So I am your person. If you have questions, I'm the person that's going to visit your school and your contact to be helpful in any way. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I just to talk for just a second about how I ended up at St. Mary's. When I was with MCPS, I went to a presentation by St. Mary's, and I kind of talked to their admissions group, and I just felt like St. Mary's was just such a special option for kids in the state to be able to have that small liberal arts education at a state school. I can happy to talk to you more about St. Mary's, but that's not why I'm here today. I'm much more general presentation. And I apologize if I'm looking off to the right, because that's where my presentation is going to be. So I'm going to get started. So when you're trying to find the right college, you're going to consider a bunch of things. You're going to decide whether you want a 2-year or 4-year degree. So 2 years is going to be Montgomery College. Lots of people will be looking for a 4-year degree, but starting with a 2-year. And oops, sorry, I was reading the chat. So that's going to be kind of your first decision. I definitely recommend students look at both. Even if you're pretty sure you're going to start at a 2-year college, you're going to have so much more access to people like me, to the supports of your counselors and your college and career advisors, all those things in searching for 4-year schools while you're in high school. So I highly recommend looking at that option, even if you're pretty sure you're going to start at a 2-year school. What size of school are you going to be comfortable at? I attended the University of Michigan. There were 40,000 students. 1,300 students in my 1,300 students in my freshman dorm, and there are only 1,600 students on the campus at St. Mary's. It's a very different learning environment. So you're going to consider that, and that may be something that you don't really get a grasp of until you start visiting, but it's definitely a factor. Public schools versus private schools. Generally, public schools start at a lower price tag, but I will talk about that price tag versus cost. But there's also different other things involved in public versus private schools. Public schools have a certain mission to serve their state. Private schools may have a religious emphasis. So, there's lots of different things that go into that. And these are just all things you can consider. Do you want to be in a city? Do you want to be in the country? Do you want to be in the suburbs? Do you want to be in a place like where you live now that you're familiar with? Or do you want to try something completely new? Do you want to be close to home? Do you want to be as far away from home as possible? Those are all things you're going to consider as well. And this is going to also be one of the places where your family is going to come in. I've definitely had students say, my parents say I have to stand out on my front porch and can't go more than 90 miles. So that's something you're going to talk about with your family as well. I personally love when kids can sort of see a different part of the world or the state, but are still close enough to come home. But that's just all very personal. Cost is a huge factor. I'll talk about this more, but I definitely try to refer to cost, not price, because what you want to know is what the cost to you is going to be, not what the price tag is on, their cost of attendance that's reported to the Department of Ed. So you want to know how much it's actually going to cost you to go to that school. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that, but not necessarily the price. So even though that's one of the most important factors, try at first to ignore that and try not to narrow out any schools just because they seem like they're really expensive. Keep it in mind, keep it as a factor, but try not to just stop considering a school because of the price tag. Majors, I should have put price higher or cost. There I go, cost higher. Majors are definitely consideration, but I try to tell students not to put that too high on their list. If you're something really unusual, like marine science, we have marine science at St. Mary's, not that many schools have marine science. That's going to be a place where you're going to be looking for a specific major. But things that every school has, economics, psychology, all those things that every school has, you might change, you might combine with something. So, try not to get hung up on which school has the best of this XYZ program, and try not to limit yourself based on the major, unless it's a major where you have to be by the water, or nursing where you have to have the clinical placements or things like that. So again, majors is a piece of it, but it should not be where you're going to fit best and thrive and be happy should be the driving factor. So I kind of talked about some of these things on the right, when I talked about the ones on the left, but learning environment, generally, small schools are going to have smaller classes, more discussion based, not always by any means, but often, whereas big schools may be more likely to have those big lectures. Certainly your first 2 years, where do you thrive? What kind of environment do you thrive in the best? Diversity is huge. Are you going to feel comfortable at your school? And what's campus life like? Do kids go home every weekend, or are they sticking around? Is what the school is offering what you're looking for? Certainly disability services. I always tell, when I was in high school, I said, if the tour doesn't take you by and at least point out the building where disability services can be found, you should ask. And that means if you have an IEP, if you have a 504, but just anything that you might need. We call our office OS3, which is Office of Student Support Services. And it's everything. It's everything from learning supports to, first generation students who have questions about how things work, to our dean of retention tells us that, at least a couple times a semester, she goes and knocks on someone's door and tells them to stop playing video games and go to class. That's all part of being a successful student. So you want to sort of know what's offered at a school and how to access that. If you want to be involved in certain activities or sports, make sure that school has what you're offered, what you're looking for. Almost every school offers a club of something if they don't have it as a varsity sport. But if it's something that's important to you that you want to continue, make sure your school offers it, or that it's something that's easy to start. That's something, clubs and things are easy to start at St. Mary's, so you might want to be the founder, but it's all part of the picture. One of the things that you guys probably isn't on your radar yet is things like retention rate, graduation rate, outcomes rate. Those are things that every college is required to report to the Department of Education. So things like retention rate and graduation rate. Retention rate is the percentage of students that come back from the first year to the second. Graduation rate, there are different ones, but how many students graduate in 4 years? Most schools actually report how many graduate in 6 years. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's not just because they don't graduate on time. It's because there's lots of programs that are 4+1, or get you a master's degree or something like that. But you just want to be aware of them. The easiest way to make college more expensive is to not graduate in 4 years. So you want to be thinking about where you're going to be able to do that. And again, that comes into starting at a community college, commuting. It is graduation rates and retention rates and just kind of getting through. Those rates are lower if you're not on a residential campus. It's just a lot easier to roll out of bed and get to class, or to go back to talk to your professor at office hours when you live right there on campus. There's certainly a cost to that, but you need to weigh the cost of that versus the potential of taking more than 4 years. Outcomes rate is something that every college is required to report. And it's the percentage of students within 6 months of graduation who are employed in a related field. So that means not just the job that they had in high school or in graduate school. St. Mary's is always solidly in the 90s. We're super proud of that. That's pretty uncommon. In the 80s is probably a nice solid amount. And if it's lower than that, you kind of want to know why. Sometimes there are reasons. Sometimes, again, those schools have those 5-year programs. there's a reason why, and they're considered to have graduated. There's a reason why they're not employed. But you want to ask all of those things. Nothing on this list is like an absolute, but they're all things that you want to consider. Okay, so what just happened? There we go. So academic fit. And this is sort of going into more detail of all the things I just talked about. So what do you want to study? Sorry. What do you want to study? What is your learning style? I talked about that small class discussion-based classes versus big lectures. 50-something-year-old me loves the discussion-based. I think you get to know your professors so much better. You build those relationships. But 17-year-old me wanted to sit in the back and take my notes and mind my own business. It's who you are. It's how you're going to learn best. If you're going to sit in the back and not pay attention, not take notes, then you may want to reevaluate your learning style. But it's all going to be what fits you best. So what are you looking to study? How do you want to learn? Your grades, test scores, not so much anymore. But we can talk about that. If you have test scores and you think you're going to submit them, then you're going to factor that into the profile of the school. But mostly it's going to be grades and the classes that you're taking. And just the same way that I usually say cost and not price, I say grades and not GPA. We don't look at a GPA, we look at your grades, the whole transcript, the trends, what classes you took, things like that, not just a GPA. So you want to see if your grades or your academic background fits the school. Are you likely to be accepted? And then I put budget in there, and people often look at it and say, why do you have budget under academic fit? And the reason I do is because often if your academic profile is at the top of a school's, you may be more likely to get merit scholarships. Merit scholarships are not based on need or your family's ability to pay. They're based on your academic accomplishments, or in some cases, things like art. But so if you are kind of at the bottom of the profile and you've just been accepted, you're not likely to get as much merit scholarship as if you're at the top of the profile and the school is trying to encourage you to come. So your budget is going to factor in under that academic piece as well. So how do you find these schools? Now that you sort of thought about, where you're going to thrive, big, small, how do you find schools? These are all kinds of ways. You can, I think you guys all still use Naviance, Big Future. We use Zemi, which I love, because Zemi is student driven. Zemi is kind of like what the old Facebook group used to be when Facebook was still cool for kids and not old people. So Zemi is free. It's a way that you get into a group of a certain school and you can chat with other students who are interested in it, who visited, who can tell you their impressions. Some schools like St. Mary's, we will have events with current students. Zemi's philosophy is pretty much that the adults, the admissions people stay out of it. But we do have things where we offer student ambassadors can talk to prospective students. Your counselors and the whole counseling department, your college and career advisors are a great way, obviously. Make sure they know what you're looking for. So that when things come across, their desk, a scholarship, a school is visiting, they can be like, hey, I spoke to Susie and Susie is interested in glass blowing and they have it at this school or whatever. So you utilize your counselors. Check out their website, college visits. We're all going to visit. I'm going to visit all of your schools this fall. You're going to have tons of colleges visit your schools. If you can't make the visit, get in contact with the person who is coming. We can make arrangements. We can meet with you virtually. So, to really take advantage of it, it's the best way to visit a college without actually going there. We visit you. College fairs, the big one in this, these are rising seniors. Do they already go to the big NACAC fair? But any college affairs you can take advantage of. Also, sometimes if your neighbor goes to private school and their school's having one, it might be a little bit smaller than the giant one, and go with them, but take advantage of going to learn from schools anytime that you can, and so that you can save actually making a trip to the ones that you're considering. I talked about rep visits, prospective student events. There haven't been a ton of those in the past couple of years because of COVID, but lots of colleges, including St. Mary's, will come to an area, come to Montgomery County and either a hotel ballroom, someplace that will have an event and they will host your families, local families, and we will bring current students, we will bring recent graduates, we will bring faculty. So again, it's a great way for us to bring the college to you and you not to have to come to the college. So these are ways that you're going to identify colleges that you're interested in. So when you make a list, so now you have colleges, you kind of know what you're looking for. You have a bunch of colleges you're interested in. How do you decide which ones are going to be on your list? Well, you're going to consider your likelihood to be accepted. So the most of your schools should be a target, which means your academic profile, for the most part, fits their academic profile. There are many, many things that go into us reading an application, and it's not just academics, but we're going to start there because we are academic institutions. And we want to make sure you're going to be successful. So most of the schools that you apply to should be targets. They should be schools that you pretty much expect to be accepted at, that maybe aren't like slam dunks where you're way above the profile. A likely would be where you're pretty solidly above the profile of that school, and it's pretty fair to expect that you will be accepted and maybe even get some merit scholarship. A reach is where you're not sure you're going to be accepted, where you're, maybe just barely in the profile or below the profile. There are some colleges that are reaches for everyone. That if you have a 4.0 and a 1600 on your SAT, if you took an SAT or 30, whatever, there are some schools that have such low acceptance rates that they are a reach for everyone. If they have under a 10% acceptance rate, there's just no guarantee to know if you're going to be accepted. If you really want to go to that school, you visited that school, you think it's a great fit for you, you think you're going to thrive there, then you should apply to a reach. You shouldn't apply to a reach just to see if you can get in. It's not like you're not collecting acceptances. You're trying to find a school where you're going to be happy and do well. You can talk about in-state or out-of-state. In-state schools generally start with a lower price tag. Again, price versus cost, or even versus value, which we can talk about. But so your tax dollars or your family's tax dollars have been going to help support those schools, and the in-state schools are going to start at a lower price tag. In-state school in a different state, however, it's going to start at a higher price tag because you're going to get that out-of-state price. A private school, it's going to be the same for in-state or out-of-state. So again, this is just something that you're going to consider. I put it on the creating a list because very honestly, I know with my own children, lots of parents will say, I want you to apply to at least one in-state school. I've been paying taxes for 30 years and, I want you to at least consider it. So that, again, we're going to go to cost eventually in the end, and it's not always going to be more expensive to be in-state, out-of-state, whichever, but it's a factor. Okay, so you've got what will make you thrive, what you're interested in. You got your list. Now, how are you going to apply? You're going to apply early decision. Not every school has each of these options. So you're going to see what the school has and apply under the choices within that school. So it's not like you can call a school and say, hey, I want to apply early decision if they don't offer it. Early decision, you've decided you are going to that school. There's a binding agreement. I talk with my hands, so I move the slideshow. It's a binding agreement. You will not apply by accident early decision. Your parents have to sign something, you have to sign something, and your counselor has to sign something that say that you understand you're applying early decision. I don't recommend applying early decision anywhere that you have not visited. Early decision is not it's not a secret backdoor way to get in to a school. A lot of kids think they have higher admit rates, early decision, which it statistically is true. However, those admit rates are higher because certain populations apply early decision. For example, athletes apply early decision because the coaches want to get their teams built. A lot of legacies, any special programs, those people apply early decision, and those people have higher admit rates. So in general, the regular old person who would normally apply early action but wants to apply early decision to increase their likelihood, it's not really a reason. If I hear, my own family, my cousin's daughter was a senior last year, and she said, oh, she's deciding to apply early decision here or here. And I was like, what? Like, you shouldn't be deciding between some schools. It should only be if you're absolutely sure you want to go to that school, you want the earliest possible decision, you kind of want to know so you can move on. That's the reason you apply early decision. Early action, on the other hand, is almost the opposite. Apply early action anytime you can, or priority, they might call it different things. That means you're going to get an earlier response. You're going to hear probably before the holidays, but you're not going to be committed to go to that school. Lots of colleges, you have to apply by the early deadline to be considered for merit scholarships. That's not the case at St. Mary's, but it is the case at many schools. So make sure you're paying attention to those details. I'd say any school you can apply early action or something that's not binding, do it, because you'll hear most schools will, tell you what they're looking for. If they defer you, just take advantage of it. There are some weird things out there. There's schools that have things called single choice early action, or you can apply early to their school and only public schools. Just make sure that you're paying attention to what they offer, but those are uncommon. Regular decision is usually due. The early decision and early action, they're usually around November 1st. There are a handful of schools, I think, that are still maybe October 15th, November 15th, maybe December 1st. Those are usually the early deadlines. Regular decision is going to be January, maybe February. And that's going to be usually your last opportunity to apply. Again, some schools' regular decision, you will no longer be considered for merit scholarships. Rolling decision. Rolling means the school reads as the applications kind of roll in and rolls them out. So it means if you apply, you'll usually hear in, say, 3 or 4 weeks. That's usually, not always. Sometimes the school will make their decision to admit you in 3 weeks, but then they send you off to the engineering school to review, or the nursing school, or whatever. I guess this is a good place to say, don't make assumptions about anything. If you apply early or rolling and you're expecting to hear in 3 weeks and you haven't heard in 7 weeks, you can certainly email the representative and check or express your interest, but it's not necessarily bad news. You could you could have been passed on to be considered for some big scholarship. You don't know, so don't assume. So rolling, some schools become rolling after a certain point. For example, after regular decision, some schools will say we'll take applications on a rolling and space available basis. Rolling is just going to mean they're going to read as they go. St. Mary's is not rolling, but we do keep moving. So what we do is when we read early decision first, they're due first, and we have to respond first. So the way we look at it is based on our commitment to respond to you. So if you apply early decision to November 15th, we'll read those first because November 1st. We'll read those first because we've committed to tell you by the end of November. Then we'll read the early actions, which come in the same date, but we haven't committed until January 1st. But if you apply, say, November 15th, which I stumbled on before, as soon as we're done all those early actions, we're going to keep reading it. Even though it's technically after the deadline, we're not going to just back them all up so we run out of time. So we do keep reading, and we do start releasing. So we're kind of sort of rolling. Open admissions means school is open to anyone. For example, Montgomery College. Keep in mind that there can be placement tests and things to whether you're starting with college level courses. So it's open. Anyone can get a degree from there, but not everybody starts at the same place. Okay, did I go too far? Okay, so you've got the schools you're applying to, whatever. You figured out your whole list. You know which deadlines you're applying on. I think my dog's about to say hello. Now, how are you going to get this organized? Create a system that works for you. You want to keep track of those deadlines, the kind of application, whether they take the Common App, Coalition, their own application, what the requirements are. All these things you want to keep track of. And you want to find, sorry, there's my dog. You want to find this easily. I've seen everything from students having a page for each college and a binder. I've seen huge spreadsheets that have all this information. All your Common App schools, that's all going to be organized in your dashboard for the most part. Whatever works for you, have a Google Sheet, whatever works for you to keep track of all this information. I will tell you, like when my first child went to college, I was like, oh, honey, make your password for college for all of them so that we can both access it and I can help you. Well, some colleges it has to start with a letter and it doesn't work. So just find a way that works for you to keep track of all this information. Okay, so now you've decided, you've got your plan, how you can actually apply. You 100% want to follow your high school's procedures. I'm sure every person on there, I know all of the college and career people that are on here, and they are so good about getting this information out. Read your emails from them. Your school will have a procedure. In most cases, it's going to be called the procedure for requesting a transcript. But what that actually means is requesting a transcript and your supporting documents. So that's going to be the things that the school has to send to. So it's not just like push a button and send your transcript, because there's other pieces that go with this. So most schools are going to have, whatever, a month before, whatever your school's deadlines are, follow them. Your teachers may also have their own internal deadlines, the teachers that are writing recommendations for you. And whatever they tell you, they're telling you what they need to do a good job. So if they say, I can't do it, or I need this information by this time or something, they're telling you that because they know what's going on in their world. They have a new baby, they have a sick parent, they are taking in grad school, whatever it is, they know what they need to be able to do a good job for you. So just follow their requests. Take advantage of early action or any kind of early programs. I talked about that before. Check your email all the time. Some people set up a, Joe for college at gmail.com, whatever works for you. Check your email. And I always say, read past the first paragraph. And this is so important because you might apply to a school, then you get this email. And the first paragraph says, thank you for applying to St. Mary's College of Maryland. We've received your application. And you go, oh, yay, they got my application. That's my confirmation email. And you don't read the next paragraph. And in the next paragraph, this doesn't happen at St. Mary's, but at lots of schools, it will then say, if you'd like to apply for scholarships, please visit the following link, or whatever it is, read it. Because we sent an email for a reason. I know that colleges send tons of emails. It's overwhelming. It's annoying. We talk about it in every meeting that we have internally, like which ones are important, but usually there's important information in there. Also going to read your email because we're going to tell you if we're missing something. So let's say you followed your school's procedure, they sent all your documents, and you get an email from us that says, we don't have it. Don't freak out. Don't yell at your counselor. Email it right back to the person who sent it to you. Say, I think you have this. There are so many reasons. You could have a hyphenated name. You could have used a nickname. You could have grown up in another country where you do month, year, or also month, day, the opposite of how it's asked for an application. There are so many reasons where we might have your documents, but we haven't been able to match them to your file. So as far as we're concerned, we don't have them. So we just can work with you. I will tell you the single most confusing thing, if you are going to use a school-specific application, almost every school has them. Most people that take Common App, all their apps come in the Common App. But for example, at St. Mary's, if you apply using the St. Mary's application, but your high school thinks you're applying using the Common App, your high school is going to send all your documents to the Common App, and we're never going to retrieve them. So they're going to sit out there in Common App world, and we're going to say we don't have them. So if you contact us, why don't you have my documents? I thought we had them. We look into it. We can't figure it out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call your counselor and say, hey, did you send this to us or did you send them to Common App? Whatever it is, just ask and we can work it out. Don't freak out, but don't ignore it. And then almost every school is going to have, I think every school at this point, a portal. So once you apply, again, in that next paragraph, after they said, thank you for applying, they're going to say, oh, this is how you access your portal. And in that portal, we're going to show you whether we've received certain things or what your next steps are. And again, many schools use what we have a slate or something like that, where it's very easy for us to see what we've sent you. And it's very easy for us to send it again. So if you have a question, ask. Say, hey, whatever it is, I thought you had this. I thought I did that. I thought I completed this step. Just ask. Okay, so I looked at this the other day and I realized it was old, but I decided I would talk about it anyway. So this is what schools, this was a survey of what colleges are looking for in an application. The reason I decided to keep it is because, with the exception of test scores, it pretty much doesn't change. And the biggest point of this is that there's lots of things we look at. So that's the biggest takeaway from this, is that we all look at lots of things, and they have different levels of importance to different schools. Test scores are, there's very few schools that require test scores right now, unless it's like a specific program. You'll know, they'll tell you. But grades, the rigor of your classes, the strength of the curriculum, those are always going to be the most important things, because that's what's going to tell us if you're going to be successful. All those other things are going to help us see if you're going to be a good fit, if you're going to be happy, if you're going to contribute to our campus community. So the biggest takeaway from this not so recent graph is that grades and courses and your transcript are the most important thing, but that we look at lots of different things. Montgomery County doesn't rank. Actually, very few school districts rank anymore. But so that's not really something that we consider. What else? And we don't, our state doesn't have graduation exams. So, okay, how do we review? So holistic review is kind of what I just talked about. We look at all of those things. Almost every school does some level of holistic review. It just depends how much they factor in all different things and how many eyes review an application. This is the College Board's definition. I always just think of students holistic with the H as being whole, the whole student with the WH. We're looking at everything. We're also looking at outside of the classroom. What kind of things have you done outside the classroom? What challenges have you faced? What type of member of the community are you going to be? Certainly with COVID, this has kind of changed. Not, you guys fortunately kind of, at least have been in school most of high school. But what are you doing with your time outside the classroom? And if your time is helping take care of your siblings or working in your family business or working to help support your family, that is just as important, maybe if not more, than being the captain of a team. And so whatever you're doing with your time is what we want to know. And we want to know, what challenges you faced. If you're working 30 hours a week, it's going to be a lot more impressive to have, certain grades than a person who had nothing demands on them but studying. So just tell us that the whole point of holistic review is for us to kind of see the whole picture. Not everybody is, wants to be the president of a club, but if you're passionate about something and you're involved in it, that's what we're looking for. So it's not the title, it's sort of the involvement and the passion. But again, so the whole point of holistic review is just that we're looking at the whole student. Okay, do's and don'ts. The very first one is my very favorite. Do set family expectations. So I'm not sure if there's parents on here. Talk to your parents about how this is going to work so that so things get done, but applying to college isn't this just black cloud that follows you everywhere. I personally am a big fan of the soccer practice model, where basically you and your parents decide, or your guardian or whoever's helping you decide that you're going to talk about college on Sundays from 4 to 6 or whatever you decide. Soccer practice gets rained out sometimes and you have to reschedule. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have this fixed time where you are committing to whatever you said you'd do the week before, having it accomplished. But your parents are committing to not nagging about it until then. Or sometimes it's the other way around, the kid's nagger. But, so your mom isn't running out in her bathrobe as you're getting in the car to go to college, to high school, and saying, like, did you do this today? So set those boundaries and those expectations with your family, and everyone will be a lot happier. Only apply to schools you want to go to. We talked about making sure you have schools you're going to be accepted to, but don't apply if you wouldn't go. There certainly can be schools that you prefer to go to than others. I'm on a lot of listservs and Facebook groups with counselors, and they talk about this kid's dream school. I hate dream schools. There's very rarely a dream school unless like every single person in your family has gone to that school, and there's still going to be another school like that. There's 4,000 colleges in this country, and there's so many things in common, and there's so many places you can be happy. So apply to schools where you actually want to go. I'm going to make a little plug. Fortunately, this daughter is now out of grad school and not around to be embarrassed. Miss Evans knows her, but my daughter, my youngest daughter, was a really good student in high school. She had some B's. She was not perfect. And she applied to lots of selective schools, very selective schools, but not uber selective schools, not those ones with like 5% accept rates. And she got into every school. And that's not the part I'm bragging about, because there were lots of schools that she wouldn't have gotten into. But a friend said to her, why did you work so hard in high school if you weren't going to apply to these like super competitive schools? And she said, I worked hard in high school so that I'd get into the schools I wanted to go to. Her mom does this for a living. That's where it comes from. She's the 7th of 7 kids. She kind of learned, but that's the goal. You want to get into a school where you're going to be happy and thrive, not the one that's going to be impressive on your bumper sticker, or not the one your parents can brag about. Your parents should be bragging about how wonderful you're doing. And to that, if I'm still going to brag about my kid, she ended up doing extremely well, getting tons of money at graduate school. So, where are you going to end up being successful is the point. I talked about this next one a bit. Use your legal name on everything. Not Miss Heald. Her name is Catherine. She goes, but you heard me call her Kate. She needs to put Catherine on her applications. Whatever matches your school records, because that's how we're going to match everything up. Be consistent. If you hyphenate or everything just needs to be consistent, so everything can get matched up. Try to enjoy the process. It should be exciting and fun. It should not be intimidating, overwhelming. You guys haven't done taxes probably, but I say it's like taxes. The anticipation of it is way worse than actually doing it. And then most importantly, should have been up at the top, ask for help. Ask us, ask me, ask your people at your school. The other thing is that we who work at colleges, we are counselors first. So if you connect with someone, you can ask me something about another school and I can help you. We sit next to these other schools at presentations, at panels, at college fairs. We know which schools we don't have a nursing program. I know which schools have nursing programs. Use us as a resource. So ask for help. Don't wait till the last minute. There are hurricanes and reasons why power goes out, and all of a sudden you can't submit your application, or you forgot something. Make your internal deadline a week, 10 days before the actual deadline. Don't apply to each school. I already talked about this, just to see if you'll be accepted. Don't only apply to each schools, and don't ignore financial fit. So this presentation, I know there are other ones about financial aid, so that's not the focus of this, but that the bottom line is, that's the cost to you is a huge piece of this. And that's why you want to have a lot of distance schools, because a school might look a lot better when they give you a huge scholarship. You want to make sure that it's going to be comfortable and that your family is not going to feel overextended or whatever it is. Financial fit is just as big of a piece as how big the school is, how far away it is. I'm happy to point you in the direction of other resources about that, but I do know that there are other presentations about financial aid. Okay, that was a lot. Does anyone have questions? Silence. I think I put my email's on here, my phone number's on here. You're welcome to reach out. Let me stop sharing. There we go. I see my friend Miss Evans. Just her face popped back. No questions? Did I overwhelm you all?
Keep in mind, students, that this is, even if it's not about finding the right fit, that Ms. Wolfson is a wonderful resource for college questions in general. So I'm just going to throw that out there, and we'll give you a minute to see if there's anything you want to ask.
When do people usually hear back? So again, it depends on the school. So the question is, when do people usually hear back for early decision or early action? For example, St. Mary's, and I think it's pretty common, are both of those deadlines are November 1st, but we commit to a response by November 30th, or I guess December 1st for early decision, and by January 1st for early action. Quicker than 3 or 4 weeks would only be a school that's not doing holistic, I would say. It's pretty hard to turn those around. So most of them are going to be, say, 3 to 4 weeks after the deadline for early decision, and then probably 6 to 8 weeks after for early action, but depends on the school. Nothing else. I definitely want to reiterate, because I worked, hopefully, what I bring is that I worked in high school and I'm now in a college, so I can sort of help with that connection, sort of that I kind of know how both things work, or at least I know what the questions are to ask. I also, because I was an MCPS, a lot of your schools have, I know some of the teachers and counselors and things. So I can say like, oh, this person went to St. Mary's, or this person went to UMD, or this person went to whatever school, and I can help you connect with that. How long before the deadline should we send everything in? Good question. So I think every school is going to sort of open your file when they receive the first thing. That being said, most schools also consider your file complete when the student submits their application. That is not every school, and that is not UMD. So make sure you know your school. But so I would say when you have it ready. What will happen though is if you submit your application to us, say September 3rd, and it's like way ahead of the deadline, you're proud of yourself because you worked on it all summer, you got it in, your high school isn't going to be ready to send their documents yet because they don't have them. Most high schools won't send your transcript until the job ad period at your school because your transcript is going to include your current grades, things like that. So what's going to happen is you're going to just keep getting reminders because it's an automated system that say, we're missing this, we're missing that. So, it's a balance. So it's a very personal decision, but I would say definitely more than a week before, because there are things that can happen. Okay, that's a lot to take in. Yeah, so this is a lot. And I'm happy to answer follow-up questions. I'm happy to share the presentation. How do you figure out which schools have the best academic supports for you? Also, food allergies, gluten-free. Good question. Again, almost every school these days is going to have certainly the food allergy piece. When I went to college, there was one thing for dinner. And if you didn't want that, there was like a sandwich, you could make a sandwich. Maybe they had a salad bar, even that was unusual. Now every college has, most of them will have multiple dining options. Even a small school at St. Mary's where we have one primary dining option, we have things that are there every day, like the grill with like burgers and pizza and hot dogs. And then we always have the salad bar, but then we have like an international thing. We're like sushi one day, whatever. Anyway, there's going to be all different options, and they're all going to like be flagged. What is gluten-free or what is an allergy. There's also going to be like a professional dietitian who's going to run the dining services, and you're going to be able to work with them and find out. Like one of my daughters is vegan, and so she just had to make sure that she knew where she could get vegan options. In terms of academic supports, most schools, the way it's going to work is so. That's the politically right way to say it. In high school, IEPs and 504s are a lot about compliance, making sure that the school is following the rules. That's not to mean they don't want to help you. They absolutely do want to help you. But, it's a public school. They work for a public system. They have to make sure they're following all the rules. In college, it's not the same rules. But in college, we absolutely want you to be successful. So what's going to happen is the academic support group is going to work with you and make sure that they have what's available, what you need to be successful. If that's note taking, if that's like extended time, if that's quiet study space, whatever it is. So you can reach out to the academic supports group at any college at any time, and talk to them and get an idea. They're not going to do like a formal evaluation until you enroll. But it is in our benefit as well for you to be successful. Some of those numbers that I talked to you about, like retention rate and things, those reflect on us. So we want to retain our students. So once we get you, we want to keep you. We want to do whatever we need to do to make it successful. So kind of a weird answer. I would say basically you can speak to the Office of Student Support Services about general terms. Again, the person in my position is where you're going to start. So if there's a specific school, you can ask them and they'll put you in touch with student support. Anything else?
Thank you so much, Tammy.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate your time, especially given your surgery yesterday. I am going to stop the recording, but this will be shared with your college and career advisor, along with all of the other workshops that we've done this summer. So thanks so much for joining us. And I hope to see you at some of the other workshops. So thank you.
Thank you.